Hi there. Today I'd like to talk a little bit more about how we can write our own music. Near the end of last year, I created a series of videos talking about how we can create our own chord progressions. So if you're new here, I recommend checking those videos out because they will be a really great place to start. I'll link to those in the description. But once you have a handle on the key signature you want to work with and the chords that you can work with within that key signature, another way of going about writing music is by starting with a melody. Writing a melody first and then finding chords that go along with the melody that you've written. And that's the approach that I'd like to share with you today. I will start this video by talking about melodies and sharing how I think about melodies when I'm writing music. And then after that, I will give you an example of how we can take a melody that we've written and find chords and a chord progression that goes really nicely with it. As always, I'm open to your questions and comments. So if you have any questions at any point about anything I mention here, I welcome you to reach out in the comments below. With that, let's get started. In order for you to capture all the great ideas for melodies that you're about to come up with, you're going to want to have some method of capturing your ideas. If you are comfortable with music notation, you might get some blank sheet music as I have here. But you can also just write down the notes that you end up playing and liking on the piano. So I'm going to try to make this as accessible as possible. I'm not going to use the notation, like the actual music notation when we're writing melodies together. I'm just going to use a marker on my paper and just write down the notes. That way you can see you really don't need very much in order to get started writing your own melodies. Okay, so now let's talk about the process of writing melodies at all. Even though I am pretty well versed in music theory, and even though I teach music theory to others, I tend not to start with music theory when I'm writing my melodies. And the reason for that is because I don't like using music theory as a tool to help me create music that is supposed to be a personal reflection or a form of emotional communication for me. So that's kind of where I'm going to be starting from, okay? If you're looking for hacks or tricks to use music theory to create the perfect melody, that's not what you're going to find here. My approach to melody writing and music creation in general is very heart-led, emotion-led, very intuitive. That is the form of music creation that I find to be the most satisfying. So that's where I'm going to start from. So now let's talk a bit about what we communicate through different melodies. I've spoken in other videos about the directionality of piano music has an emotional impact on the listener. And so this is very much in part of how I write melodies. I've talked before about how when music moves up the piano, moves higher up the piano, the movement of going higher up the piano has a feeling of adventure, exploration, moving away from safety, optimism, and that the feeling of traveling down the piano, going to lower and lower notes, has a feeling of gravity to it and a feeling of weight, of maybe coming home or some emotional heaviness, okay? I still think about the directionality of music when I'm writing melodies. I tend to think of melodies in terms of lifts and falls. So I will choose a starting point on my piano and then basically listen to how I'm feeling emotionally at that time. Do I feel like moving up and exploring things, or do I feel like settling back down and moving down? So let's look at an example like this together. Okay, So on my piano, I'm going to start on, let's say, a middle C. Writing music, in order to make this accessible for as many people as possible, I'm going to start composing just in the key of C major because it's the easiest key. It has no sharps or flats. And I will lead you through a very short demonstration of what this looks like for me. Okay. So let's say I was to start on the note of C, and then I just basically wait and feel. Where do I feel like going? Well, I'm feeling pretty happy today. I'm feeling pretty optimistic. So I think I would like to move up the piano. I'm going to start moving up. And so, well, how far am I going to move up then is the question. Well, I don't know if I need to quite go this far. I don't need to go quite as far as G. That's a pretty bold movement away from C. But maybe just kind of like a halfway point, like maybe here, maybe E sounds nice. So I'll start with my C. That feels good. Okay. But then, it's kind of gray out and I do feel kind of, I don't want to stray too far from home. So maybe after going to that E, maybe I'll just kind of like drop down to a D a little bit. But then I don't want to stay in a low place. I do ultimately feel optimistic. So maybe at that point, I will go up to a G. Maybe I feel bold and ready now. Okay. So that's the melody that I've kind of started with. Sure. Okay. It doesn't need to be perfect. It's not a masterpiece, but what I'm doing is just practicing exploring my emotions and communicating them on the piano. So I am going to jot that down. I went from a C to an E to a D to a G. Let's take this to the whiteboard and let's find some chord progressions to go along with this. Okay, so we are back at my whiteboard and I have the different chords of the C major key signature in front of us. If this does not look familiar to you, then you should go back and watch my previous video where I outline the different chords in the C major scale and why these are the chords of the C major scale. That will be very helpful. But for the rest of us, let's move on and let's start figuring out a chord progression that would go really nice with the melody that we've created so far. So now the process of finding chords to go along with your melody really is as simple as this. You simply take each note that you've written and you figure out which chords in your key signature already contain that note. By choosing a chord that goes along with your note, you are automatically left with chords that are going to harmonically resonate with your melody. So then the process after that is just once you know which chords you could potentially use for your melody, then you just sit down and experiment with them until you find a combination of chords and melody that feels right to you. So I'll show you that right now. So now let's first of all start with our first note, which was C, right? So now we have to look at which chords in our key signature contain the note C. Definitely our C chord contains the note C. If I were to keep looking along the staff for notes or chords that contain this letter C down here, I won't find any more. But there is another C on this key signature, and it's this one right here. This is a C as well. So which chords have this C in it? Well, now I see a couple. So this one is the one chord. So we already have that one. I'll just do a little, okay. I could use this one for C. If I keep following it, looks like there's a C here. So I could use the 6th chord. It looks like there's a C here, and I could use the 5 chord. So that means that for the first note of my melody, I could use the 1, 4, or 6 chords. So I'm going to go ahead and write that down. Okay. Next was E. I'm going to put that down because that was hard. Next is E. Let's look for the different E's on the staff. So E is here. This is an example of an E. So I will do a check mark here. The 3 chord could be used for my E. No other E's on this line, but there is another E up here. So E is also found up here. So again, we could also use the 1 chord. Oh, right, which I forgot to do here. Okay, so I could use the 1 chord. Any other E's? Yep, here's an E here. So I could use the 6 chord again. Any other E's? No. So for the E, I could use the 1, the 3, or the 6 chord. Okay, good stuff. I'll write that down too. Okay, let's try D next. Which chords are going to have a D in it? Do you want to pause the video and see if you can find them yourself before I find it out here? Okay, well, here we go. Okay, there's a D here, so I could use the 2. No other D's down here, but there is another D on the staff. The other D on the staff is here. So this is the tricky chord that I didn't talk about before. So this here is the 7 chord. This 7 chord I have not labeled because it's considered dissonant. It doesn't naturally fit in the categories of major or minor, so I'm leaving it out in my series right now. But this is at least showing us where a D is. So let's keep following this to see if there are any other Ds, and there are. That's your 5 chord. So then any others? No. So then what I'm seeing is that if I want to do, for my D, I can use a 2 chord or the 5 chord. Okay, so I'm going to write that down. And last but not least is G. Is this still showing up? Okay, good, yeah. So G. G is the top note of this chord, so I could use the 1 chord again. Are there any other G's? Yes, here is a G, so I could use my 3 chord. Any other G's? Yes, I could use my 5 chord. And no other G's here, but there is 1 G up here. Any other G's? Nope. So for G's, it could be 1, 3, and 5. All right. So this is what my paper has ended up looking like. I'll get out of the way so it focuses on that. You can write down your chords however is the easiest for you. This is just, I'm going to be experimenting now with these different chords. I put them down in terms of Roman numerals because that just came naturally to me. There's really no reason. You could also write down the chord names if you wanted to by their letter name. Totally up to you. So now let's head back to the piano and let's try out some of these chords with our melodies and see if we can find a chord progression for this melody that emotionally resonates with us. Okay, we are back at the piano. Let's give this a try out. Let's see if we can find some chords to go along with our melody. So basically this is just a matter of experimentation until you land on something that feels nice to you. Now, technically, every chord arrangement that we could come up with technically will sound harmonically appropriate for our melody, but what we're not really looking for technical perfection here. We're looking for emotional communication. So I will demonstrate that a little bit. So one thing that I notice is that our first 2 notes, the C and the E, they both go along with a C chord. So let me see how that goes and how that feels for me. It's okay. It's all right. Again, it works technically, but am I feeling it? I can't say I'm feeling it. I feel like I'd like a little bit more movement when I just go from a C and just stick with that C for the second note. To me, that just feels like we're not really going anywhere, and I feel like going someplace. So I'm gonna choose another chord. So I mean, what if I went from the C chord up to the E chord? I could try that out. Okay, let's give that a shot. Oh, it's very pretty. I do like that. Let's keep going. Let's add a few other notes of the melody to this. Maybe I'll try the D chord with the D and the G with the G chord. Let's try that and see how that feels. There's certainly movement there, and I do like that better than just staying on the C. I almost feel like there's too much movement now. And you're welcome to disagree with me. Like, this is the beauty of making music, right? If you want to take this melody and come up with your own chord progressions, because you're like, Sarah, you're doing that wrong. You missed a great opportunity there. That's what we're looking for. Go ahead and take that. Okay, let's try that. So that felt like a little bit too much movement. So to narrow down the amount of movement, I wonder, are there any chords that are shared and common between the E and the D? No, I don't see any there. What about the D and the G? Oh yeah, there's the 5. The 5 chord is shared between the D and the G. So what if I moved from the C chord from the 1 chord to the 3 chord, and then just landed on the 5 chord and listen to how that sounds? Let's see how that goes. Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. I'm feeling it okay. But I'm not in love with it. And what I like to continue until I fall in love. So let's keep exploring stuff. Okay. I'm just going to noodle around a little bit, and if I land on something that I like, then I will come back and let you know what that is, okay? Wait a second. I like that. Whatever that was. I can't even remember what I did. Whatever that was, I liked that. See, the reason why I like that is because when I went up to that G at the top, I kind of expected that to end on a major chord. But I kind of like the disruption of ending on a minor chord. It makes me feel hopeful. Like I'm hopeful because I'm going up to a G, but I'm not like, I don't have huge expectations for this optimism either. It's gray and rainy out. I don't know what else to say. I kind of like that, how I end on a minor. So at any rate, okay, so this is what that was. That ended up being a the 1 chord to the 6 chord to the 5 chord to the 3 chord. And what's really interesting about that to me is that I can see my left hand going down, continuously going down. Oh, there's so much gravity, there's so much weight here. I think I'll stop there for now. This could go on for a long time. But basically, let's recap the process here. So we sat at our piano and we decided which key signature we were going to work in. Then we played around with notes. We played around with directionality and jumps until we found a melody that it didn't need to be impressive. It didn't need to be a masterpiece, or like a masterpiece in the rough. We have no expectations for our melodies at all. What we're doing right now is practicing listening to our intuition and practicing expressing that feeling into our piano and practicing recognizing when there's alignment between what we're feeling and what we're hearing on the piano. Okay, so that's that. When we found a melody that worked for us, we wrote it down. You can either use notation or you can just use letters as I did today. Once you have the notes of your melody, then you can look at your key signature chords and determine which chords could potentially go along with that melody. And then once you know those chords, sitting down and experimenting and just being purposeful, being mindful of how do I feel when I'm playing that? Do I feel excited? Do I feel heavy? Is it getting there but not quite? And this practice right here of finding an alignment between what you're feeling and what you're hearing on your piano, that is the challenge of music composition. The challenge of music composition is not knowing music theory and getting everything theoretically perfect. To me, that's almost a distraction. The real challenge is having the courage to because there's no guarantees it's going to happen every time, right? I don't always find chord progressions that I like, but I can't help myself but try, because when I do get it, it feels really, really good. So thank you for watching this and sticking with me. I feel like this is going to be one of my longer videos. So I really appreciate you being with me here and enjoying this process. And of course, if you have any questions, any comments, any suggestions, or your own chord progression that you came up with for this melody, I would love to hear about it in the comments. So I invite you to reach out. Thanks so much. Have fun at your piano and good luck with your own composition. Good luck. Bye-bye.